Good morning and welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd Grubb here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program covering natural health on this year Wednesday morning. Rise and shine and give God the glory. And this morning here, we're looking at a topic: vaccine no match against flu bug. So welcome again. Hopefully, you had a blessed night rest, and looking forward to having this discussion with you. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, I thank you for the blessings of today, for the blessings of life, and for the blessing of the wisdom that you give us on how to best take care of our bodies. May you be with us, dear Lord, that we might truly be proactive in these things. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. So I'm sharing with you this topic here. This is a blessing to share this topic here. This is again, I'll take this straight from the article I'm going to read. So there's an article I pulled from NBC News, and it is written by Associated Press, or coming from Associated Press. And it is entitled, my top topic is Vaccine No Match Against Flu Bug. And so this is a flu bug that the flu season had just passed. That's already winding down. It was a little bit extended this year. And this is the flu bug that we're talking about here this morning. And so I want to share not only the article, but I want to share with you some tips and things to do to take care of your body, to take care of your health, whether or not, because somebody could say, well, they believe in the vaccine. Well, the numbers that came out yesterday or this week, the numbers are very low. So whether or not you're gonna take the vaccine or not, the issue here, the numbers that came out last month, the issue here is that whether or not you take the vaccine, you're up the creek without a paddle anyhow. So it's better to learn some natural means to take care of yourself. So even if you take it, you still have some natural means, because it was a total almost wash this year. It didn't do anything this last season. So I'll start out by reading Proverbs 26 verse 2. Proverbs 26 verse 2. As the bird by wandering, as the swallow by flying, so the curse causeless shall not come. So this text here will be illustrated later on when I go towards, midway towards the end of the presentation. Well, I show that there is reasons why disease get transmitted, and when you start to understand this, you start to know why they say an ounce of prevention is worth more than 1,000 pounds of cure. You want to be able to prevent it, and so most of our proactiveness is knowing how disease happen, how does it come about, and then when you have it, then the 1,000 pounds of, or 1,000 pounds or a pound of cure will help you. So I'm going to give you everything today, but at least hey, look, I know how it happens, what's going on, and I know what my options are. And what I'm going to tell you right now, according to the numbers that I'm going to read to you, the numbers coming out of the CDC is not, it's very dismal. And, over the years, I've covered some of these topics, and, people, it's the issue where people will like, you seem not to be big on drugs and big on vaccines and stuff like that. And many people believe it's a foregone conclusions that the vaccine, they're doing wonderful things, and any negative press about the vaccine has been false. Well, I'm gonna tell you, the it's not done yet. That situation is not done, and this is an example this morning I'm gonna give to you that will show that there's so many material coming out that it is not what they're making it out to be. They say everything that has to do with anti-vaccine is just quackery and madness. Don't listen to these people. They're not looking at the total evidence that is going on, because they want to sell this thing that it works. And this is what is not happening here. And this is one type of vaccine. So I'm not going to say this cover every single vaccine, but this is an indication that here's one of these vaccines that people take in mass, large quantities, and yet the effective rate is down in the dumpster. So I'm going to read it. I'm going to give it information. I won't spare you any longer. And this is the type of stuff that people, oh no, what you're talking about doesn't make sense. I'm gonna tell you, this is absolute sense. Vaccine no match against flu bug that popped up and near year end. All right, so towards the end of the flu season. The flu vaccine turned out to be a big disappointment again. The vaccine didn't work against a flu bug that popped up halfway through the past flu season, dragging down the overall effectiveness to 29%, the U.S. Center for Disease and Control and Prevention reported Thursday. The flu shot was working well earlier in the season with an effectiveness put at 47% in February, but it was virtually worthless during a second wave driven by a tougher strain at just 9%. That was no significant protection against that strain, said the CDC Brandon Flannery. Flu vaccine are made each year to protect against 3 or 4 different kinds of flu virus. The ingredients are based on predictions of what strains will make people sick the following winter. This season shot turned out to be a mismatch against the bug that showed up late. That pushed down the overall effectiveness to one of the lowest in recent years. Since 2011, the only season with a lower estimate was the winter of 2014 to 2015, when effectiveness was 19%. A mismatch was also blamed then. Vaccine against some other infectious disease are not considered successful unless they are at least 90% effective, but flu is particularly challenging, partly because the virus can so quickly change. Overall, flu vaccine has averaged around 40%. Flu shots are recommended for virtually all Americans aged 6 months or older. Officials say that vaccine is still worthwhile since it works against some strain and is likely prevented 40,000 to 90,000 hospitalization over the winter flu season. The CDC bases vaccine effectiveness on preventing cases bad enough to send someone to the doctor. So that last statement is important. So what we're talking about here is not per se if you just get a sniffle, you're sick for a few you're sick for a few days, right? This is not what we're talking about here. What they're talking about is when a person gets sick to the point where they have to go to the doctor for some type of medication or something. That's the type of sickness. So again, if you just have in some runny nose and you feel down for a few days and then you're back up and you're good, they don't count that. They're talking about vaccination that prevents a doctor's visit or a hospital visit, right? So you're really sick. So that's important. So if we're talking about the same thing, if we're talking about dealing the effectiveness of natural to deal with like the flu, we are talking about not so somebody getting the sniffles, because you could be natural and you get the sniffles. Or what I will always say to a person is that if you do get the sniffles, you do get a flu, what the natural is supposed to be doing is limiting the harshness of the disease and the duration of the disease. So you're limiting how long you have it and how quick the system get rid of it and how harsh does it get. Anyhow, so let's look at the numbers here before I go to some of the things I want to talk about. So the vaccine, it says, has an effective rate of 29%. So before, they claim in February, at the end of February, which to me is normally, in my estimation, is when the flu season is hot, but normally cold because of the temperature. It was at 47%, so that means a 1 in 2. Give that 1 in 2. But it became virtual worthless as a tougher strain came in at the end and came in at 9%. That means 1 in 10 effective rate. Now, as you know, even those numbers, I'm not sold, right? but we're talking about something that will send a person to the doctor, the hospital. So the person is really sick. So it was effectively worthless, which is, the idea here. Now, notice here that the flu that came in after February, which is quick, it came in at only 9% effective rate, but it came in at a different strain. So this is something about disease that I'll read to you in a second. That diseases constantly mutate. The disease mutate, and what it is that, from my belief perspective, from what I've studied, is that the mutation is also caused by the drugs. The drugs is causing the mutation, or drugs in general. And the solution often creates some of the problem. So some of the mutation is not just the disease mutating on its own. Some of the mutation is a response to the drugs that they're trying to hit the disease with, and the disease figure the drugs out and outmaneuver the drugs and build up immunity. So the new strand is more powerful and tougher, because whatever drugs you would hit it with, whatever you try to deal with it, it can't. And so this is part of the problem. I'll explain it a little bit more in a second, or in a few minutes. Now, there was no significant protection, the CDC say. I do believe this is consistent, because remember, the effective rate is 29% for the whole season, but because they're taking 47 and 9 and divided by 2. But technically, as I say, if you have, when the season is heating up, when it's hot, because normally you find the last 2 months of any season is the real season. Like normally December is winter, but you would, part of December is winter, but you would say really winter is February, January, and February, because that's when it colds till it cracks. It gets so hard in the coldness. It's the same thing with summer. You experience it in summer right now, but summer really kicks off, in a serious, solid way, consistent way, normally in July and August. That's when you would say, man, it's just solidly hot, at least up north. So anyhow, so when you think about that, the real brunt of it, when the cold really start to affect our bodies in a serious way, because our body has such a hard time warming up from, single digits and double digits in the teens to keep our body at room temperature is very difficult. There's a lot of pressure on our bodies, and then we are indoor more, so we get less vitamin D, and all these are the reasons that causes the body to be susceptible to any type of thing like a flu. So this is why I would say the effective rate to me is going to be tested when the thing is at its peak, which I know the flu season starts in the fall, but the peak of it to me is January, February, March. And then after March, it calms down. And this flu season, they say, went longer because there was nothing stopping it. So this is why anything I share going forward, whether you listen to this and you still take a flu vaccine, that's each person personal decision. But it's important to consider these natural remedies and these natural solutions that I'm going to suggest to have, because again, if you took the flu vaccine and February came and you were hit with the flu, you still have to, if you don't do some of the things I'm saying here, you're just there suffering. You're gonna have to run out and get some medication that will create a new form of the disease again inside your body, because the drugs is gonna cause the disease to mutate. I'll explain more in a second. So having some natural solution and understanding how disease gets transmitted and how disease mutate, viruses and bacteria mutate. These two concepts is very important to understand, so that you understand the value of having some natural remedies. Because again, if you did this 9%, that's nothing. I don't even believe that 9%, but CDC said so. I take it as it's good. 9%. It's a good number. There was no significant protection, as the CDC says, and also they did 3 to 4 different type of flu viruses, different strains that they put in the shot, and the overall effective rate is nothing. In 2000, in 2014 and 15 season, they say the effective rate was 19%. So if the effective rate is 19%, what we're talking about here is at the beginning of the season, it has a high effective rate, and at the end of the season, it was almost nothing. So what we're talking about here in 2014, 2015, it was like at the end of the season, February through, February, March, it was nothing. There was no effective rate. So if in this season and in the 2014-15 season, if me and you were having a conversation, and me and any medical professional, anybody was having a conversation, at that season, anything I say going forward, you're 100% dependent upon it. Because if it was January, February, March into April, because there was not in the medical system per se, are the vaccines. We're not talking about Tamiflu and all these other things, but the vaccines would offer you no immunity. So that means you would have to go find you'd have to go to your doctor and get some antibiotic or something, or you're going to have to go get some natural remedies. And so that's important to consider. Anything I say, I don't care who it is. You could be whatever, rich, poor, free or bond. The vaccine didn't do anything. So, and this is quite a few years this has been happening, because I've been looking at this over the years and trying to understand what's going on. And the more I understand it, is the more I try to share with you here. So the vaccine is normally considered, normal vaccine is considered 90%. If it's 90% effective, it's considered to be an effective vaccine. But with flu, because it's so constantly changing and mutating, 40% I think is good. That means they say if 100 people come, 40 of them got immunity, they became stronger, they consider this a success. Here, 19 or 20-something% is a failure. But remember, that's a blended number. Towards the end of the season, it was virtually useless. And I'll stop there. So I'll go in now. I share some of this information with you here. So you see that information. So this is powerful information. Now, why? Because I say if anybody question the efficacy of, I'm saying that wrong, of vaccine, people always think it's just total madness. But I never talk about these type of stuff unless I just go straight to CDC numbers. And the reason I prefer CDC numbers, because it's better. The people are saying that this is like a magic bullet, to use their numbers. And when you use their number, you see the benefit of having some natural means. You see, I've never wanted to say to a person to never do any type of medical nothing, or not to do surgery, or not to do anything. But understand your options, understand a fallback plan. Understand if the doctor tell you we have nothing else to offer you, so you go to the doctor and they say you have a bacteria, virus, or whatever, and they say we hit you with everything and nothing is working. Just understand anything natural is worth exploring. At least you give it a try. It's better to try than to die. Don't die unnecessarily. That's all it is. And nothing too fanciful what I'm saying or crazy. I think it's quite balanced. So notice again, I read this as I share some of this information with you. So we understand here from the Bible that as the bird by wandering, as the swallow by flying, so the curse causeless shall not come. Flu, any other disease is a curse. And it did not cause pain and suffering is a curse. The Lord would not have us to be in pain and suffering. And the Lord would want us to know our options. Not just our options chemically, but naturally, because we need to have some solution for our pain and suffering, because God wants this for us. Now, in the book, this is a magazine I'm pulling this from that was written in 1899. It's an article, chapter from an article written by Ellen G. White. And she writes this in 1899. So this is important because this is an advent of the drug system. It wasn't going to come to full fruition, but it was being developed at the time. And she penned a statement that is very important for understanding of how disease, primarily talking about pathogens and drugs, work. Now, drugs never cure disease, the statement says. This is how it starts out. So it never cured the disease. And it is true. The medical system or the pharmaceutical companies, they don't say they're going to cure you. People don't go and say they cure from anything. They just say how long you live after you got it. You manage the disease until the person dies. That's a given concept. Whether you have high blood pressure, diabetes, and so forth. So if you have any of these things and you're on drugs, understand it's just managing it. You don't need to take, after I talk to you, you don't need to take it. You don't need to be silly in any way and take the stuff and throw it out per se. What you need to do is understand what this drug is doing. And then in the meantime, you have to figure out now how to do something natural for yourself. And that's just how the concept works. It's not something, to me, very radical. The more I understand it, is more just very becomes simple. Drug does this, natural does this. And if you're not doing something naturally, your option is drugs. It's sad to say, but you can't not do drugs and not do natural, because it's the disease and the way it works. And the moment you understand that, you'll understand better as I go along here why I say that. So continue to reading here. Drugs never cure disease. This has been well documented and proven. They only change its form and location. Notice here, this is, to me, a profound statement. In our modern day, she could just simply say they only mutate the disease. Now, if I say that to you, you'll understand that better. They mutate the disease and change the location of the disease. That's all. There's a famous disease called Stevens-Johnson syndrome, named after the doctor that found it or figured it out, where you could be taking some type of drugs, and the body rejects the drugs, kick it out through the skin, give the skin a chemical burn. You just look it up, Stevens-Johnson syndrome. The body try to expel the drugs. They see the drugs as a poison, and inadvertently, by trying to save the patient from the drugs, because the body see the drugs as a poison, because it is a poison, the body kicks it out through the skin. The drug is so potent and dangerous that it burns the skin and gives the person a chemical burn. And people often die from this Stevens-Johnson syndrome, because the drug is a poison. You're trying to poison something in the system, but sometimes it poisons the system. It's the same thing. You could give a person antibiotic, and instead of killing just the virus or the bacteria or whatever that is trying to kill, he ends up killing the patient. The patient dies because the drug is a poison. It's a killer. So understand this. It does change the form and location. Why? Because with viruses and bacteria, just say pathogens, they are intelligent organisms. They will learn the poison, dissect it, so to speak, study it, and then they'll develop new strains and protection to be able to stay alive while the poison is in the system or in contact with it. But by doing so, what the disease just did was what we will call mutate, because the disease now, I figure out, oh, this is what they're shooting at me. Okay, I'll develop a protection. But that protection made the disease now more stronger, or the pathogen more stronger, the virus, the bacteria stronger, so it become more dangerous. So this is what she's talking about. It doesn't change it. It just changed the form of disease, because disease just, okay, I outdo that. But by outdoing that, now it become more violent in the system. And it changed the location, because it might say, you can, if you have time, read up about AIDS. AIDS will go in the reservoir of the system, the body. And it will come to a point where the AIDS is not detectable by blood tests. But it's inside the system, into the organs, and it stays there. As a matter of fact, I remember when I was young, I learned, this was one of the first things I learned about bacterial viruses, that some of them are aerobic and anaerobic. And I remember that they're able to go into a dormant, so you could freeze something or you could cook it and the bacteria is still alive, because it can go to a point where it protects itself, even heat or cold. And then the moment the temperature becomes right again, it starts to multiply. This is where you could open a can and it bursts right open. and yet that can has been dipped in water, sealed, all kind of stuff. The things are inside of it are cooked, but the bacteria is cooked in it. So the moment you start to get that in your mind, you start to see why we have to be so careful. And the best prevention is actually to avoid. So that's why cleanliness is always next to godliness. So the disease itself is not being cured. The disease is just being mutated by the drugs. It's the drugs that actually causing some of the mutation. I'm not going to say all the mutation, because the disease will, virus and bacteria and stuff, they will mutate according to the conditions. That means they could become more heat resistant, more cold resistant, and they can live. And you can have life form in frigid cold areas of the world. So this is important when we talk about the vaccines are no match, because the vaccine, the flu virus this year, it went longer than many years. We had a longer flu season. It was extended, and it was more aggressive than before, and so it made vaccine effectively nothing. Important. I'll read a few more sentences out of the statement here. Notice it says here, nature alone is the effective restorer. How much better can she perform her task if left to herself? So they've seen this many times. They've studied patients who have prostate cancer, breast cancer, so forth. And they find the ones that they did the surgeries on and they hit them with the chemo have the similar outcome. Or even, the ones that had the no surgery and no chemo and better outcome or similar outcome than the ones that got it. And so it has this, if you go again, I've covered this here, but you go again and look at some of the breast cancer, the prostate cancer, the various different cancers, they have questioned, the effectiveness of some of the surgeries and some of the things. Somebody says, so do you believe in surgeries or not? I believe sometimes if something is sitting on the lungs, sitting on a nerve, something that needs to be relieved, you relieve it. But you just have to know what is cancer, what is it doing, and then you start to understand what your options are. So nature alone is this effective restorer, and how much better can she perform her task if left to herself? But this privilege is seldom allowed. If crippled, nature bear up under the load and finally accomplish in a measure her task double task, and the patient lives, the credit is given to the physician. But if nature fails in her effort to expel the poison from the system, which would be like Stevens-Johnson syndrome, and the patient dies, it is called a wonderful dispensation of providence. So God allowed it. If the patient had taken a course to relieve overburdened nature in season and understandingly used pure soft water, this dispensation of drug mortality might have been wholly averted. The use of water can accomplish but little if the patient does not realize the necessity of strict attention to his diet. So she put in a few things here. Water, allow nature to take its course, strict attention to diet. Because if somebody say, well, Lord, I have type 2 diabetes. Well, the same thing. I read here. Drug doesn't cure disease. It only changes the form or location. You need to pay strict attention to your diet. You need to be able to use pure soft water. That means water that is as pure as possible without all the minerals and stuff. And you need to give the body time to work. This is the process to deal with sickness. But again, if you say to me now, no, I want to be able to eat what I want to eat. I want to eat all the deep fried food. I don't want to do no physical exercise and exertion. I want to be able to slouch around and sit around all day long. And I don't want to drink too much water because I don't like water. And then you say to me, what's my solution? I'm going to say to you, yeah, there's some herbs you're going to take, but everything you're doing there is going to override the drugs and the herbs. So you go ahead, tell me, what do you want to do? Because everything you're going to do is going to override the drugs and the herbs. So if you take drugs, you're gonna override it. So forget about the drugs, but take the drugs. But you gonna take it, you go give the doctor a headache. Your doctor is gonna have a headache. I'm gonna tell you, because every time he's gonna give you more and more and more. And your diet is gonna destroy the drugs. So even the benefit you could get from the drugs, you're not gonna get it. So what's your solution? Just gonna medicate you until you die because you're clowning. You're not serious. You're a clown. So this is the issue. The issue. Remember, antibiotics became the darling of the industrial farming process because they figured out that the antibiotics could make the animal walk around living filth and not get sick. But what happened? The antibiotics now start to change the form and location of diseases. So now the diseases are becoming drug resistant. Now we have this new problem, which we call flesh-eating bacteria. So people now are having flesh-eating bacteria, having drug-resistant bacteria. The bacteria and the virus have become violent because they've mutated, because we've hit the animals and the human beings with so much antibiotic that what we have now, we have some superbugs. That's what we call them. And these superbugs or super pathogens, they're vicious and they'll eat you alive. Where did that come from? That come from, I'll read it again, drugs never cure disease. They only change the form and its location. So when we talk about the vaccine is no match. What the vaccine is purported doing is not what I believe it's doing. I believe what it's doing, it might give the person temporary relief. But when it comes back next year, that person is going to be hit with a flu that's going to be even more vicious in the system. This is what's happening. In Isaiah 30 verse 1, it says, "Woe to the rebellious children, says the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin." So this text here to me illustrate what the drugs is doing. See, somebody have high blood pressure and they go to the doctor and the blood pressure is out of sync, way off the charts, and they need something to take it down. I'm not going to be the one to say don't use something to take it down. That's what emergency medicine is. The medicine will do it per se for temporary, but you can't live on that type of stuff. As a matter of fact, I was going to cover it this morning, but I've covered it before. Losartan, which is the high blood pressure medication, is on recall again because it's contaminated. It's contaminated with drugs or with some type of drug or chemical that cause cancer causing chemical. It's that's just what's going on. So if I say to you, look, you're already on this stuff and it's help you bring down your blood pressure, have you considered doing something natural? Have you considered diet and lifestyle? Have you considered learning to deal with your stress and anxiety? Have you considered stop screaming and shouting? That, if a fly pitch on you, you start to shout and go crazy. Have you considered that? And the person be like, no, I'm not considering that. I'm dependent upon that drugs. You see, this is where the problem is. It's a mindset. Because they're covering sin with sin. The drugs itself, I don't know if any of these drugs were meant for permanent use. Probably 1%, 2%, 3% of the drugs. All of them were designed to be, the whole concept of them was never for long term. You have an emergency, you have a pain, and you need some powerful painkiller. Great. How you be taking painkillers every day of your life? There's something wrong. You need to find some other means and methods for long-term pain management. Else you're going to become an addict. That's just the problem. So we continue here. Isaiah chapter 4, verse 1, 2, and 3. Isaiah 4, verse 1 through 2 and 3. So we lay down some principles here. Now hear the word of the Lord, ye children of Israel. For the Lord hath a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, nor mercy or knowledge of God in the land. See, some of this has to do with the knowledge of God. Because when you understand God's principle, you understand the devil principle. The devil principle is always a deception. There's no truth in the devil's thing. It's always to cover instead of fix. God's system is to cure, is to give permanent relief, is to go to the root of the problem and try to figure out what's causing it. So we'll cover some of that in a few minutes. By swearing and lying and killing and stealing and committing adultery, they break out and blood touch their blood. Therefore the land shall mourn, that everyone that dwelleth in it shall languish. Languish is a long-term sickness where you get no relief. with the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven, yea, the fishes of the sea also shall be taken. Now, the question is it God doing this or is it man doing this? Because when you look at the issue of these medications, especially antibiotics, and you see how we have poured into the farming system, into the fowls, and into the beast, these antibiotics, and they come back and poison us and poison themselves. When you look at all the fishes dying because of all the chemicals we poured into the waterways, and then we go and eat the fish, and then we have all kind of mental problem because our bodies are filled with mercury. Who's doing this? Is it God's doing this or man doing it? When you look at all what's going on with what we call free range cows or cattle or fowls of the air, and they're swimming in all these filthy lakes with all these dangerous toxic chemicals, where you have the frogs turning, I think, female, and you have the men turning frogs, or the men turning female. They have a low sperm count, and all these things are becoming more effeminate. And some people wonder, yeah, look, this is happening. Whether or not, I don't know what 100% causing this. But when you have men that they're becoming more feminized, and they have more, they're having more traits that seem like they're more female. And this is not just their actions, but when you test them, they have lower testosterone, lower drive, and they're becoming more fruity by their actions. So it's one thing if they were just behaving more effeminate. It's another thing when you test them and you'll be like, oh, they're actually effeminate in a blood test. Who's doing this? Somebody can say it's God, but I'm like, wait a minute. But all these chemicals, estrogen, BPA, which is the chemical that's in the plastic. When I tell people, especially, I'm going to say male or female, because I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you what I'm trying to say. You shouldn't drink out of the soft plastic water bottle. Right? Don't drink out of the soft plastic water bottle. When you taste a soft plastic water bottle, you taste that plastic. That's literally the plastic that's being leached from the soft plastic into the water, and you're drinking it. And that soft plastic is what you call like the BPA. It's fake estrogen. That chemical synthesized estrogen is bad for both male and female. It makes the men become estrogen dominant, and it makes the female have breast cancer. Just put in BPM and you see what I'm saying. And so when you look at this is what's going on. And this is chemical now. So if somebody say, so does this apply to the statement you just read? Now you're not trying to solve it. You're taking a chemical in your system, a drug in your system, not for disease, but just to drink water. And as you take this drug in this system, this drug in system is a fake estrogen. And it's going to get into the female breast gland, because it's just a gland. And it's going to get into the men, and it's going to make the men become more estrogen instead of testosterone dominant. And it's going to mess up the female because it's now a chemical, dangerous chemical, cancer-causing, proven cancer-causing chemical agent that's getting into the breast glands of female. And I tell people, do not drink this, because think about it. It should be logical, but I think nobody knew, because I drank it before in the past. But I remember I was drinking, I'm thinking, man, it's a horrible taste, because that soft plastic that you could just crush the bottle in your hand easily and you just crumble. That bottled water I'm talking about. Because when you drink out of it, you can taste the plastic. It's not a matter of that it's just a little bit. Like, you have to think about like if you hear me talk this, you're like, what is he talking? What is he on about? Go ahead this morning, and if you have one in your house, or you see one, you go somewhere, they're giving it away free because it's garbage. That's why they give it away. And it's just going to mess up the water systems anyhow. Go ahead and drink it. And you can drink go drink a Fiji, I think it's called. Or go drink filtered reverse osmosis water. Or go drink some distilled water. Then take out that plastic and drink that out of that thing. And you will taste you smell the plastic, you can taste the plastic. But that plastic, how many years ago I would drink it? I didn't know what it was, but I would taste it and think, man, this thing is horrible. It's not good water. But the moment you start to understand that, oh, this is fake estrogen, you understand, man. And you start to see the guys looking weird, they're acting weird. You start to wonder, is there some? I'm not saying that's what's causing them to be all effeminate. It makes me wonder because they say go online, search about the drop in the male testosterone and virility. They have no vitality, and then you make you wonder: is that what's turning them frogs? It make you wonder. So, but it is a chemical that is not has anything to do with no doctor is prescribing it to you. You're just getting your female hormone via plastic bottle. This is crazy. Now, I'm going to read a statement again before I go to some solutions here. Watching my time, go to some solutions for the flu. Here's a statement that is very important. This is from the book Ministry of Healing, one of the books I play here on the radio station in Cycle. And this is a book, Ministry of Healing, page 126. People need to be taught that drugs do not cure disease. It is true that they sometimes afford present relief, which is true. I'm sure you've experienced that. And the patient appears to recover as a result of their use. This is because nature has sufficient vital force to expel the poison and to correct the condition that causes the disease. Health is recovered in spite of the drug, but in most cases the drug only changes the former location of the disease. Often the effect of the poison seems to be overcome for a time, but the results remain in the system and work great harm at some later period. So I'll pause there. It work great harm at some later period. So you're getting results, you're getting some relief, but as later on comes, this thing is in your system, and most people have found this out. This is why you could have a problem. You take the drugs, you take the hit with the chemo, the whatever, and then a few months later, the thing comes back and say the cancer come back like a monster. And everybody's shocked and say, the doctors say it was all gone. And when you understand disease and drugs and its interaction, you don't stop. To me, if you do that, then what you need to do is start getting aggressive. Start to, and this was something that I'm gonna do this right here because before I start this, I was thinking, okay, there's the mental side of it. But I was thinking, do I talk about the mental side of it? Because sometimes it's sometimes probably hard to follow if I'm wrapping two things. Because this is a sermon in itself. You think about this, right? So you take the drugs, you think you have a solution. But this is also true for like marijuana. You think about that. Or cocaine or whatever. The person didn't do anything naturally to deal with their problems. So they might stop even the marijuana and they might smoke for myself. Okay, all right, I'm good. I feel better now. But they never did anything natural. So the problems that they have with depression and with certain lethargy and all this type of stuff in their heads and negative thinking and all that, they didn't do anything naturally to deal with it. When it comes back, it's going to bite them in the posterior so bad it's going to be terrible. Because, as I say, you only have two options. You can go the fake route where you deceive yourself into thinking you solve your problem. Or you can go into the route where you do natural. It doesn't matter if you deal with a disease of the mind or a disease of the body. It's the same solution. You got to do it naturally. You got to do it the Lord's way. The temporary relief will come if you smoke weed or if you take crack cocaine, whatever. You get temporary relief, but you still didn't solve the problem. The deficiency in the brain, because the brain is an organ like any other organ. The deficiencies and the weakness of the brain doesn't go away because you smoke weed. It's still there. You just deceive yourself that it went away. And when it comes back, it's going to be even worse. It makes it worse. Continue reading. By the use of poisonous drugs, many bring upon themselves lifelong illness. And many lives are lost that might have been saved by the use of natural methods of healing. So notice there, I can apply this to drugs like literal psychotropic medications or illegal drugs. You look at a person, they're using ganja and they think, okay, I've solved the problem of my brain. No, you didn't. There's nothing in weed that can solve the problem. We deceive you to thinking the problem is solved. You give me a person that's a stoner, you give me a person that's an alcoholic, give me a person whatever, they're deceived. Somebody say, I mean, they're deceived, they're fooled. The drug is fooling them and thinking to solve the problem. Their brain is getting worse because they're not addressing the underlying problems of the brain. The weed is deceiving them into thinking, oh, you're good. You're not good. But me taking coke, they're bouncing off the wall. It didn't solve the problem of the brain. The brain is still messed up. And the drugs is going to even mess it up more because the drug is a poison. It's a poison. And many people come up with lifelong illness that the drugs have created. But in first, I never met a person who smoked weed that they weren't deceived by it or take any drugs. They're deceived by it. I don't know how, if I could jump and scream and say this. I've never met a person. They all deceived by it and their brain get worse as they use it more because it's a poison. They're smoking poison into their brain. The poison contained in many so-called remedies create habits and appetites that means ruin to body, soul and body. Many of the popular nostrums called patent medicine and even some of the drugs dispensed by a physician act a part in laying the foundation of the liquor habit, the opium habit. And today we'll talk all about the opiates and the heroin habit, the morphine habit that are so terrible a curse to society. Notice here she's talking about disease, and then she go from disease to drug addiction. What happened in this last? Because somebody could read. I mean, man, people have knocked this statement and knocked Ellen G. White. And here we are, 100 and something years later. We're in the throes of an opiate epidemic. And what is the major cause of it? People went to the doctor because they wanted medication for pain. And they got a medication for pain. And now a small percentage of them have died. Large percentage of them are hooked. And they're not hooked now to any patent medicine. They're hooked to heroin. They're hooked to all kind of drugs. K2, crack, cocaine, blah, blah. Why? Because they started out for something for pain. But the pain, it developed into them into an alcohol drug habit that now they can't kick and it's killing them. It's the same thing. Nothing has, look, 100 and something years later, nothing has changed. The only thing that's happened is that these false prophets come up and they, oh no, how dare she say something like that? Because, we have medicine now, we have microscopes and all this type of silliness. We have science. Because you're reading here, the only hope of better things in the education of the people, the right principles. Let physicians teach the people that restorative power is not in drugs, but in nature. To restore is in nature. Drugs is just a temporary relief, emergency to deceive you. Disease is an effort of nature to free the system from condition that result from a violation of the laws of health. So notice here, this statement, I'm going to read it again. Disease is an effort of nature to free itself from the condition that result from the violation of the laws of health. So this is so true. If you think about diabetes is a result of nature to try to free itself from whatever abuse that you put upon it. But while it's trying to free itself, you could give it drugs or you could try to help it free itself. You could give it herbs or you could try to help it free itself. So to me, like again, recently I was talking to somebody and they were looking for solution for lung cancer. So I say the number one thing that has to be done is that the person has to stop smoking. And I said, if the person don't stop smoking, you can make some effort, but you just go tie my time up. You're wasting my time. The person has to stop smoking. The person want. So I'm going to say, hey, look, take some of these things. I'm going to tell you what to take. But beyond this conversation, I'm not going to get involved. Because you just tie my time up. And worse yet, the doctors say, stage 4, I think. I mean, you stage 4 and you don't want to stop smoking. I don't know. A hit in the head with a piece of plank is going to be mild in comparison to what you're going to suffer. You don't get this. So again, disease is just a try. When you're in pain, you have to remember there's something wrong. And I'm never going to say don't stop the pain, because when you're in pain, you want the pain to stop. I get that. But you got to free yourself by figuring out what's causing my pain. You can't ignore the pain, as you're going to end up with a stroke or a heart attack. That pain is telling you worse is yet to come. Continue reading here. In case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained. Unhealthful conditions should be changed. Wrong habits corrected. then nature is to be assisted in her effort to expel impurities and to reestablish right condition in the system. So this is why you cleanse, you nourish. You have to first figure out what you need to cleanse, because you have to figure out what's causing the disease. And then next you have to say, how I nourish the system. Then you nourish the system, and then you have your solution. Because the disease is because something has been put upon it that's causing pain to the system, that's damaging the system. And then the body says, I'm going to make you feel pain so that you address this thing. So if you have a kidney stone, the solution is not a painkiller. Now, the painkiller might be needed to relieve the hurt. But after you've got that hit, what you need to do now is figure out, okay, all right, I need to change my diet and lifestyle because these stones are killing me. And you move forward with that. But the disease was created because of some ill that you put upon it. But yet, somebody said, but Lord, you were talking about the flu. So I'll share this one information with you, and then I'll share some solution for flu in the next few minutes. Now, it's important to understand how disease transmission work, because in understanding this, then you will understand that what I'm talking about here works similar for not just diseases that are lifestyle disease. That means disease you eat or you think you do, or repetitive strain injuries. Disease also can be transmittable disease. Now, not all disease 100% work like this. You know, there's disease like malaria that comes from mosquitoes. So the primary thing you need to do is figure out how to limit the amount of mosquitoes and stuff like that. That's an issue within itself. You prevent even getting bitten, and if you do get bitten, figure out what type of medications, natural remedies to take to deal with it. But when we talk about disease, one of the best ones to deal with, which was the dread that we built out of the pharmaceutical vaccination system of, is poliomyelitis or poliovirus. Now, poliovirus is normally viewed as preventable with disease, but the transmission of polio is noticed is highly contagious via the fecal oral route. So the particular way how people get polio is via the fecal oral route, feces that contaminate food. So disease transmission primarily via the fecal oral route by ingesting contaminated food or water. It is occasionally transmitted via the oral route, a mode especially visible in areas of good sanitation and hygiene. Polio most infectious between 7 to 10 days before or after the appearance of the symptoms, but transmission is possible as long as the virus remains in the saliva and the feces. What has been shown over and over again is that the disease often, when there's contamination of feces onto food, and food is not properly clean, or there's not properly disposal of feces, and there's either feces on the ground or feces wherever, that the disease will run rampant. So what they have found is that there's a direct correlation. You can go online and look at the correlation between the sanitary improvement in any area, especially in the Western world, which was very well documented, and the reduction and removal, primarily disappearance of polio. Because what it is the more unsanitary conditions is the more polio would spread. Because anything that is contaminated, anybody that's infected will pass it on. Even though I think it's 5 to 10% of people who get polio become damaged by the polio. So the moment you start studying disease, you start to understand that a lot of diseases that are not lifestyle diseases, but communicable diseases, are surrounded, are in the area of unsanitary condition, because the disease need a lot of fecal matter and food contamination, and people eating food that is not properly washed, properly cleansed, or being damaged by, whatever. As a matter of fact, that's one of the reasons I limit the amount of food I eat from Mexico, because many times you have think about a lot of the foodborne illnesses came out of Mexico. I don't believe in using manure. I try to stay away from manure as much as possible for food. Growing food, I should say, and stuff like that. But in some places like Mexico, they don't have a problem using manure, even human manure, to fertilize the food. By that, you have a higher percentage of contamination. And you think about a lot of the outbreaks that happened in the last few years. A lot of the food there were foods that were vegetables and fruits that were coming out of Mexico. So this is one of the reasons why I say you have to be careful of that, because a lot of diseases that are not. The other reason why you should consider with disease, that some disease caused by deficiency. You get scurvy. Scurvy is a vitamin C deficiency. There's certain vitamin A deficiency diseases. And when you start to have high levels of vitamin A increase lymphocytes activity, proliferation, they increase T killer cell differentiation, and it gives the body an ability to fight more effectively any diseases like flu. So you want to be able to have food with high vitamin A, and these foods include carrots, sweet potato, dark leaf greens, cantaloupe, mango, bell peppers, high in vitamin A. So if you're having any type of thing like a flu, you want to increase these foods in your diet, so to help the fighter cells fight to destroy the flu. Other things that's important to do that real quickly I throw here up on the board for you. Well, it's not a board because I'm just looking at my screen. Is to increase the amount of garlic that you have if you're having a flu or any type of disease like a flu that is a communicable disease that your immune cells need to be fighting. Garlic in various different forms, best to crush it or to blend it and consume it that way. Use certain essential oils like thyme. Thyme is a good virus bacterial killer. Use all of a sudden oil of oregano, eucalyptus oil, essential oils of cinnamon, cloves, very important. Turmeric is a very good healer, both externally, internally. Honey is also good to be used, especially if you're having sore throat. There's different form of what you call sore throat. I forget all of a sudden what it's called, but it's when you mix the syrup, whereas you can soak for probably 8 hours to 24 hours. You put like probably half a cup to a cup of honey. You add some chopped up, diced up garlic, and then some onions, like a whole a whole head of onion. You soak that for 8 to 24 hours, and you use that as your cough syrup. All of a sudden, now I remember what it is. And you add a little bit of turmeric, not turmeric. You can add some turmeric, and then you add some the thing called cayenne pepper powder. In that, you use that as your freshly made, powerful, sore throat. I just said it and forget it. Calendula is good. I mentioned oil of oregano. You make a tea with yarrow, the herb yarrow and pleurisy. It's good if you're having some type of cough and pneumonia. You do this to build your system up. You increase the amount of vitamin C content foods. So anything like I was going to say camu, but I want to say lemon, lime, grapefruits. Very good. That's why I find it interesting that the time where the flu season hits the hardest is a time where we have high availability of citrus food with high in vitamin C. The Lord gives us vitamin C foods at the time when we have the flu season. Also, Lord gives us things like carrot, which is good in vitamin A. So these things are very potent to fight. Some herbs to use for when you're going through flu. The two main herbs are always echinacea, golden seal. Echinacea acts as a stimulant for the immune system. Golden seal act as a product or herb that will open up your sinus passages and make them flow, or your mucus passages, I should say. So where your mucuses and stuff start to clog up, golden seal work to free them up and clean them out. And then the immune stimulant is the echinacea. So those are your two go-to. There's other herbs that you'll take that will boost and build your immune system, but those are the two herbs to me that are basic. You build on those, and then you take that. Most essentially, plenty of water, plenty of tea to hydrate the system. If you have like a sauna, you use it to get your system sweating while you're drinking like the teas. And you do that, you find that these quick solutions that I give, and there's much more, will help you way along your way to be able to fight off or ward off the disease. And as you know, the basic principle we learn in the Old Testament is cleanliness is next to godliness. You clean your inside, you clean your surroundings, you clean everything, and you will help yourself not only not spread disease, but you help yourself heal. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, I thank you for the blessings of the help message. I thank you for your kindness towards us. Though we're sinners, you still give us mercy and give us wisdom how best not to suffer in this world of sin. May you bless us, dear Lord, as we apply these principles and these remedies to our bodies and to help others. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, thanks for being with me here on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you again next week. Tuesday is my aim, as I'm going away to Detroit this week to do some health and preaching. Well, until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.